Hello, everyone. I'm Sky, and today with me is Summer. Welcome to the Soundtrack of Our Lives podcast. It's an honor to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be on here.
We're happy to have you here, and so we just want to give like a quick info on you, some stuff that we have. We know that you're a composer, an artist. You play the piano, right?
That's right.
You do like studio recording. You're a touring musician as well.
Yes, I wear a lot of different hats
Yeah,
basically
okay.
within the world.
And you have played in like orchestras as well?
When I was growing up, I played in orchestras. I don't do
Okay.
that anymore, but I do work
Anymore.
with a lot of orchestral players. It's just
Hmm.
not in a formal orchestra, but I
Okay,
do
okay,
hire a lot of orchestral players. So
okay. So, obviously over the years you've done a lot of things. Like I just mentioned, like playing, composing, touring. I mean, that's a lot. That's incredible.
oh,
'Cause you,
thank
you
you.
look you look really young. So I'm just like, when do you get all this stuff done?
Oh goodness, I promise I'm not that young. I actually just turned 34, and it's just one of those things that I felt that I personally had a really late start when it comes to music. And I'm only saying that in a professional standpoint because a lot of people in the music industry tend to, study music business or are music majors, somehow are already like thinking about that while they're in college if they choose to go to college. But when I was in college, I was planning on being a lawyer. So I was a legal studies major. I
Okay.
minored in music mostly to boost my GPA because I really thought I was going to apply to law school. So I always was passionate about music and I had studied music up till that point, but
Hmm.
it was very much uh, just a given to me by my parents that after I started college, music was just a hobby. I wasn't supposed to, pursue it professionally. So I didn't make that decision until after working at a law firm for about a year and then realizing, oh no, if I'm going to ever have to take a chance on my passion for a profession, I have to do it now because unfortunately LA and Hollywood, the entertainment industry
Yes.
likes young people. So if I'm
Yeah.
gonna try it, I might as well try it now. And if it doesn't work, I can always go to law school. So that's kind of been the backup plan always. But um, that's how it started. But it's been more or less condensed in the past 10 or so years, give or take. But I only started doing studio and touring work in at the end of 2017. So uh, yeah, it's coming up. Just like I don't know if we count the pandemic. I feel like I've only really been doing it, for a few years because
Yeah.
of that. But um, I feel very lucky to have been in this situation, and I'm always, trying to hustle, looking for more work. So
Yeah.
that's essentially how I'm trying to do what I do and keep it going.
So you graduated from law school, right? Like you
I
finished that career.
I did not go to law school. So I
Okay.
got my bachelor's in legal studies and then I worked at a law firm doing HR and recruiting and I was studying for the LSAT and like I was about to apply to law schools. I had like written different like law schools admissions essays, but I never actually sent out the applications.
Okay.
That was kind of when I decided to make the change in my career. So um, I basically had an identity crisis meltdown. And then it just kind of led to me being like, you know what? I know my parents really want me to be a lawyer, but I have to do this for myself because it's my life. And if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? So
Hmm.
that was kind of the thought process.
Okay. But you started playing music as a kid, like were you like you were involved in like music
Yes,
classes and like studies and all that?
absolutely. So when I was really young, I was actually very shy. I still am in certain situations today, but I was like super shy. I wouldn't speak in class. And during one of those parent teacher conferences, they told my mom, Summer's so shy. She doesn't really speak. Maybe we could have you guys sign her up for some sort of group something so that she gets some additional involvement with other children and feels more comfortable speaking to them outside of class.
Yeah.
And so my parents signed me up for group keyboard lessons. And so I was 7, at the time, and I remember not taking to it immediately. I remember being like, oh, this is tough. Like, I don't really like this. I didn't want to do my homework. But, my parents being the like somewhat strict parents that they are,
Yeah.
like, they're like, you're going to stick with this. You're going to try it for at least a few years and you're going to do your homework. So I just did it. Um, and eventually I ended up getting to a place like maybe about 2 years into it, probably, that I realized I started really enjoying it
Hmm.
because we did, there was obviously like technique and playing, some theory, but I really loved ear training. So they would just make us listen to different intervals and like major or minor chords. And I was really good at that. And it was that led me to realize that I could start learning some of my favorite songs by ear instead of
Okay.
just practicing classical, which is what they taught us. So it was at that point I was like, oh, this could be fun for me because I could play things that I like and not just, Bach and Chopin, which is fine. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But at the time, I was like, this is boring. I'm like, this is so regimented. So that's how it started.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, as someone who started playing piano, I was maybe 19, kind of
Okay.
just like when I started college. I have to say, it wasn't fun. It still was it still wasn't fun to have to play like classical music like at 19, 20, when you have to get things done. I was
Right.
still struggling. I would
Oh,
sit
yeah.
down and I'll be like, oh, I don't want to study this. I just want to learn like the fun songs that I
Right.
see on the radio or that I hear on the radio, all that. So, like, I cannot imagine being 7 and then having to stick to uh studying all those things, um and not wanting to.
Right, like I think pretty much at any age, if you know what you want to play and your teacher is not teaching you those things, it can just be a little discouraging. So, I mean, if you want, like, unfortunately, a lot of teachers will like to like start with classical or jazz just to get good technique, and I understand that, and I like to do that. But when I teach, I like to teach a combination of one of those
Mhm.
with also a little bit of whatever they want to learn. Like, like, oh, what's your favorite pop song right now? Or
Yeah.
whatever you like to listen to. It doesn't even have to be pop. Just so that it keeps you a little bit more engaged and it makes you realize the versatility of the instrument, right? Because it's like, yes, you can play classical and you can play jazz, and both of those could be really complex.
Yeah.
But it could also be this fun thing
Mhm.
where you get to, just play songs you like and you do it for enjoyment and not
Yeah.
very much, cerebral like reasons. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
um
understand that.
I think it's also kind of funny that you mentioned that one of your favorite things was doing like ear training and intervals and all those things. Because I feel like that was never one of my favorite things. And probably in my class, I don't think anyone enjoyed, like, when they were like, okay, now we're gonna do some ear training. And I was like, oh my God, no. Like, I right now, I'm not gonna be able to hear the difference between this. And
Sure.
I've never thought that was fun. I mean, obviously, it's something very important that we need,
Sure.
but uh, just funny that you like enjoy that part so much.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, like, everyone has their different strengths. I just remember thinking, oh, it came easier to me than some of the other kids, and I think that's like a large portion as to why I liked it. Like, it's if I'm good at something, I'm more likely to like it than dislike it. Like, I wasn't so good at technique when I was a kid,
Mhm.
so like when they made me do whatever F sharp major scale, something with like a bunch of black keys, I
Yeah.
was like, I hate this. This is terrible. I don't want to do this. I hated sight reading. Sight reading was the worst for me. But when it came to ear training, I was like, okay, I think I got this one. Like, so that easily became my favorite.
Okay. So, what helped you finally choose the music career path when you were already working in something completely different? Like, what made you realize that you actually did want to be in the music industry and not where you were at that point?
Well, it was something that I feel like was slowly unfolding within me. Like, I had this realization that I really loved music, right? That's why even throughout college, even though I wasn't a music major, my parents wouldn't let me major in it. I still took some music classes, and I like convinced them that I could do a minor, that it would help me get into law school. Because I told them, I was like, I'm really good at these classes, so it'll boost my GPA. And they're like, okay, as long as it doesn't like take too much time. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I was like, in college, I was in a band with like my ex-boyfriend at the time, and then I played with some other friends. Like I was always doing music on the side just for fun, right?
Okay.
And then there was like a few big moments that really made me reflect on this that led to that decision. And I'd say probably the two, or actually the three largest moments were: one, I decided just for fun with friends when I was looking for jobs in the first place. So I had just graduated, I was looking for jobs, and my friend had told me about this DJ named Skrillex. So this is back
Okay.
in 2010, right? I was like, oh, Skrillex, I've never heard of him. And you know, this is right before like dubstep was blowing up.
Yeah.
I did some Googling, I found some stuff, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's like very different than the music I had listened to up to that point. And then so sometime in early 2011, I was like, you know what? It'd be really cool if I put together a medley of Skrillex songs for piano and violin, because I had a bunch of friends who played violin and viola. So I was like, okay, I'll get a few of my friends together and I'll write an arrangement for piano and strings. And so I did. I put together the Skrillex medley for, you know, three strings and myself on piano. And it was just supposed to be for us, you know, not, I didn't expect anybody to see it. Usually my YouTube videos at that point probably got 20 views, you know, I wasn't expecting anything. And
Yeah.
then 3 days later, Skrillex reposted it. And getting that validation, you know, from the artist, and he was like, wow, this is so cool, these girls did the wobbles too, or something like that. And he was just really impressed with it. And that validation coming from someone who was doing this professionally made me think, oh, maybe I'm better at this than I think, you
Yeah.
know, because like I didn't major in music. I've never taken arranging classes. Whenever I arranged, I was just doing it by ear. And so I just, I didn't know like if I was good or bad, you know. I was like, this is just something I do for fun. So
Yeah.
that's how it started off. And he reposted me, and that just gave me a bunch of validation to be like, oh, maybe I should keep doing this. And so I covered more Skrillex, and then he reposted more of my videos. And every time I thought, wow, you know, maybe I should be taking this a little bit more seriously. So I would say that, in tandem with me working at the law office and having one of the partners there who was a hobby musician tell me after hearing me play, like, I think I really enjoy having you in the office, but if I were half as good as you at my instrument, I wouldn't be a lawyer. And I was like, oh man, that's a really nice compliment, but I didn't know what to do with it quite yet. And then the third time was when my now husband, but then just like we were just friends, told me that I didn't look like somebody who worked in a battery, was the quote, but that was because the office that I worked in, it was called 555 California. It's, you
Okay.
can see it in the San Francisco skyline if you look at the skyline. And it literally, it looks like a Duracell battery, like sticks up in the middle. And he was asking where my office was and what I did. I was like, oh, I work at this law firm, Jones Day, San Francisco. It's in that building, 555, the one that looks like a battery. And he was like, you don't look like a girl that works in a battery. And something about that statement felt so profound to me, where I was like, I shouldn't be just like putting myself in this box, you know, like I
Yeah.
told myself that's what I should do because that's what my parents wanted me to do. But, you know, who's to say that that's the right profession for me? Because I
Yeah.
feel like I've always been a little bit more creative in my solutions to different things. And maybe I should take a chance on a creative career. So it was like a combination of those things and me just kind of working up the courage to tell my parents. That was mainly it. Like it was time for me being like, okay, I need to tell my very conservative Asian parents that I'm not going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like this is going to be very disappointing for them, because that was always the expectation, and I knew they were going to be disappointed, and I was right. They were very disappointed, and it really basically wasn't until I was becoming more financially successful doing music that they started to not necessarily approve, but at least like not actively disprove. So they're slowly coming around. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of families don't understand when you want to go into a music career because most people just see it as a hobby.
Yep, exactly.
So for me, like I always got asked what I wanted to study when I graduated like high school. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do music." They were like, "No, uh, like a serious career, like that's like
Right.
a hobby." And I was like, "No, it's like a career. Is it
Hmm.
not? Like there's schools out there for music, so it should be a career." So definitely like you actually went to a school for a different thing. So that's
Right.
crazy for me to think about that.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know how else to describe it besides saying it's like a feeling like you have to do it,
Yeah.
because I was like, I knew that if I didn't try it at least, I would regret it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be one of those people, who's like at the end of their life being like, oh, if only I tried. Like, so I figured, all right, I might as well do it. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And then I go to law school, right? Because that was already the plan. So I didn't feel like it was a bad backup plan. It was the only thing that was just tough is that I decided to make this career choice, but I didn't have any connections. And as you know, like everything in music is connections, right? So I didn't know any musicians. The closest thing to a connection I had was like Skrillex reposting me, but it's not like we were friends or anything like that, right? So like that was nice validation, but like it's not like he was going to help me get jobs or anything like that. Um, and so I just had to slowly like start building out my network and took like a bunch of wedding gigs. I started teaching piano. I started
Yeah.
doing things that I knew I could do, right? So advertising myself as like a piano teacher, playing little weddings here and there, slowly started also taking corporate events. And then I cold called my way into different residencies. When I was living in NorCal, I like played at a wine bar
Yeah.
on Wednesday nights, Double Barrel Wine Bar in Livermore. I used to play there, but I don't think they're there anymore. It's sad. But there, and then I played at Alameda Rockwall Winery. Lots of wine, basically, and then a pizzeria. I'd cold called my way into these places that all had pianos, and I was just playing there regularly as like my regular gigs, and then I would also take that. And then when I moved to LA, I remember I cold
Hmm.
called over 300 hotels to try and get a residency as like the hotel pianist. And so finally, one of them basically was like, come in, we'll audition you. Most
Yeah.
of them just didn't even care. Like they either didn't have a piano or they already had a pianist or they had a piano but didn't want to
Oh
hire a
wow.
pianist or just or like they just didn't care. Like I don't know who you are. Like why would we want to hear you play? Why would we pay you? Basically. And that's totally reasonable, but I didn't know how else to get my foot in the door. So I was like, I'm just going to cold call everyone and then just see what lands. And so luckily, Balboa Bay Resort in Newport Beach, like this fancy resort out there. They have a piano at their restaurant called Waterline, and they took a chance on me and had me audition. And then I became like their resident, like Sunday brunch pianist, and then I played for events for them and everything too. So that's how it first started. But it definitely was a transition because I didn't have any connections. I just had to
Hmm.
kind of throw myself out there and just cold call people because sadly I didn't have any direct connections to any place.
Okay.
So it was definitely a lot of that. And I think that's probably what worried my parents the most. And also, just like, I don't know if you've experienced this too, but like as a non white person in the music industry,
Yeah.
I know like growing up, I didn't really see myself represented in music. I'd go to shows and I didn't see any, like brown Asian people on stage ever. Like the only brown Asian musician I knew of was MIA. That was the only one I could think of. I literally couldn't think of even one other person. And I remember, I think that's
Yeah.
something that like even though my parents didn't want me to do music, they wanted me to do something more academic. They still
Yeah.
were one of the reasons they were the most hesitant is like they told me like Summer, if you go to a show or you like look at like movies in Hollywood, you don't see people that look like us. And that was true. They were right. There weren't people that looked like me. And so I was like, you're right. Maybe they don't hire people like me. And unfortunately, in many ways, like it's still, the entertainment industry is still learning to be diverse.
Yeah.
Like I've been turned down for gigs for not being white, for not being black, for not having a big enough chest, like crazy things, you know, where I really didn't think, like, I knew to an extent it's the entertainment industry, they care about appearances, but I didn't think that it would
Yeah.
be so race based when I got here, I guess. Like, I thought there would still be opportunities for me or people that looked like me. And for specifically the pop world, it's much
Yeah.
more exclusive and like aesthetic driven. And so basically, when I got into the studio touring world, it was in rock, which is definitely much more accepting of like, they don't really care what you look like, they care that you can play,
Hmm.
which is something I always really appreciated because once I realized I was going to auditions and I was told, like, oh, they actually only want a white person, oh, they only want a black person. And I was like, when are they going to want a brown person? Like, no one's ever asked for brown musicians. Is kind of crazy. So I was really glad that eventually when it started working out, it was because a rock band found me on YouTube. And that's how it kind of like snowballed. But it was one of those things that, you know, my parents were right to an extent. Like there's still parts of the
Yeah.
entertainment industry that want a specific look. And if you don't fit that look, then too bad. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's hard not being white. It's hard not being black either, because we're just like in that middle ground spectrum kind of thing. Uh, and then obviously having different backgrounds with the family, like you said, your parents are Asian, or in my case, my family are all
Right.
Colombians. Uh, so it's like, oh well, I don't have any white in me. Like
Right.
there's not anything white in me.
Right.
So like how do you get out there and do all these things when everyone you see and you obviously admire are white people who look amazing, perfect skin, perfect hair.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then a lot of them have like known families or someone who helped them out, and then you're
Yep.
like, well, I'm a regular person who would like to who would like to do this
Exactly.
thing, but I have no idea how to, like you were saying, how do I get out there? Like, do I just have to call, send emails, like? And I know like cold
Yeah.
calling people and then having them say like no thank you, or not even listening to you, that's
Yeah.
hard, because at least like validate you,
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, well, we will give you a chance, like at least like pretend that you care. But people out there is they're just cold, like they don't care. No, no, thank you. And I think other like barrier, another wall that we have is also we're um and I know a lot of people are gonna disagree, but we're also women.
Yes.
And then in
That's
the
a big
music
one.
industry, yeah, and then in the music industry, a lot of time is mostly men. Like numbers show that it's mostly men. So is it
Yep.
like, is there something wrong with me for wanting this career? Or is there something wrong in the industry for not having a lot more women out there? Or what is going on with women that maybe they don't want to choose the career? Like it's so complicated, and maybe guys don't see it that way, or maybe other people don't think that way. So
No, and I think, yeah, I think our perspective is unfortunately one that most women have. I've, so
hmm.
just to pivot slightly, like I have this blog that I started during the pandemic only because it's something, it's like I've had a passion project. I wanted to know, like, are there other Asian musicians like me? It was literally born out of the idea when I was going to auditions and like everyone was white or black. And I was like, is there anyone who's brown?
Yeah.
Like any brown, even like not even Asian brown, you know, Latina brown. And I have no idea. Like I never saw it. It's like I just remember thinking everyone is either white or black and I'm just some weird anomaly and I don't fit the look. And I was really worried, like, you know, I was like, there have to be other people, and like, hopefully, some of them are successful. Like, how did they
Yeah.
get there? I want to know their stories. So I was looking for these people basically. And then, just like because I'm Asian, I decided to like focus specifically on Asian American Pacific Islanders. So I interviewed
Hmm.
a bunch of people like across, you know, the AAPI diaspora and got a lot of really interesting responses. But I would have to say, one of the questions I asked was like, do you think your being an AAPI has helped or like
Hmm.
hindered you in some way? And a lot of people said like yes to both of those things. Like sometimes it's helped them. Like if there's an Asian artist that wants Asian musicians, then it's helped them. But that
Hmm.
was very rare. But then it's like hurt them in many cases because like people want, you know, whiter Black musicians, etc. But mainly the thing that was like even more important than that was that it was like strikingly different between the men who responded to that question
Hmm.
and the women who responded to the question. The women who responded to the question just seemed to get discriminated against in general, regardless of like what ethnicity they were, whether they were mixed or full Asian or whatever, seemed to have a much tougher time in the industry than the men in general. And I just thought, okay, all right, I'm not crazy. It's just that a lot of women, even the ones who are absolutely phenomenal, better players than I, like just
Yeah.
incredible musicians that I look up to, and they've struggled with getting men to recognize that they're good at what they do, which
Yeah.
to me is crazy because I look at them and I'm like, you're one of the best people I know. It doesn't matter like gender at all. Like you're one of
Yeah.
the best, right? And I just admire that. But they too have dealt with people just being like, oh, you're a girl, so you probably aren't that good, just kind of like
Hmm.
dismissing. And you just think like it's
Yeah.
2023, like I would have hoped, over a decade or two ago people kind of would have like stopped the sexism, but
Yeah.
unfortunately it's still there. Even though it's not necessarily as overt,
Yeah.
it's still there, and like you'll still get comments like, oh wow, you're like really good for a girl.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like what type of compliment is that? Like, so yeah, unfortunately, that is something I would say
Yeah.
is still very prevalent. It's less prevalent than it used to be, but it's still there.
Yeah. I
So
mean, the numbers still show that
yeah,
it's a very like big gap between women and men, and obviously all the in between like
yeah,
us.
but definitely in producing, like I think it's awesome that you're a producer because unfortunately, there are definitely not enough female producers.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
looking at statistics and it was just far too low, and I was like, this is
Oh
so
yeah.
depressing.
It is very depressing, especially when you're trying to like maybe like Google people, get a little bit more information on what you're learning and what you're doing. And then obviously you see all these very, very known white men that are in the industry as mixer engineer, master engineers, producers, and most of the like people I listen to just work with men. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like sometimes we would like to see more women also working with those people that like we listen to or have that person
Absolutely.
to like also admire and all that. So you were talking a little bit about the AAP,
Oh, AAPI, yeah.
AAPI, yeah. Uh, so your inspiration came from you not having anyone to look out
Yeah,
to, like not
basically.
find them
I
the same.
wasn't, I didn't personally know very many Asian people within the
Mhm.
industry. And I remember thinking, like, I know a lot of Asian people growing up who ended up like studying classical piano or like, classical instruments, but it
Yeah,
was all like within that genre. Or like when I thought of like other Asian musicians, it was only like, oh, Koreans who worked in K-pop. Or, like it was very like ethnocentric, like things that you're like, oh, well, of course Koreans are working in K-pop, like it
yeah,
obviously, and like, oh, clearly Indian people are working in Bollywood like music, like aside from ethnocentric music, just in the general world of pop, like I didn't see like anyone that looked like me, whether it was like the lead singer of a band or like even their backing band. I just remember
mhm,
thinking like, and something I did really admire is like, I saw, Beyonce hiring an all black female band. I thought that was really cool, right? But I also thought, okay, well, this is really great. And I'm really glad this is empowering black women. And I thought, what artist is going to empower like brown women? Like I don't know, like obviously I'm immediately disqualified from that type of gig because I'm not black, and I totally accept that too, because it's like,
yeah,
you know they're marginalized in so many ways and I think they should be lifted up. But then also, like, when is another artist going to like lift people, like even if it's not me directly, but people that look like me? I would love to see more of people like myself represented, whether or not it's even me in that position, just so
yeah,
that like girls that are like us when we were younger could go to these shows and say like, oh, like she's doing it, so maybe I can do it one day
Yeah.
too. Because I think a large part of the barrier is like literally not seeing your like really not seeing yourself represented just makes you think it's not a possible or like viable career for yourself. So I'm just like
Yeah.
somebody who's like I over the years I just do not care how many no's I get, I guess. And that's I think for me has been one of the reasons why I've been able to get like certain gigs is because I just don't give up. Even if I'm told no hundreds of times. It is really discouraging though. Like it is really hard to hear that over and over again and then be like, all right, I'm going to still continue. And hopefully someone says yes. But that's the thing that has gotten me to those points is that it only takes one person. It's just the
Yeah.
knowledge that it takes one person saying yes. Being like, okay, I can go and cold call 300 places as long as like the like, you know, maybe number 312 decides to say
Say
yes,
yes.
then it's worth it, you know? And so I
Yeah.
would say it's definitely been worth it, but it's definitely not an easy road. Um, yeah, it's definitely been
Yeah,
tough.
no, definitely. So maybe what is something right now that you are trying to do to help navigate other people like you, kind of like navigate these obstacles in the music industry and maybe try to inspire more people that are in this range of not looking like the rest.
So one of the things I actually did over the like later pandemic, I think this was
Mhm.
2021, I heard about this organization. It's called Diversify the Stage. Really cool org. It was started by Noelle Skaggs, and she's in Fits in the Tantrums, and she's
Okay.
just an amazing person. Like I don't know her very much personally, but like from
Hmm.
what I've experienced and the fact that she put together this amazing organization, I just really admire what she's done. And this is not just, you know, like people on stage. This is also like just music industry in general, like behind the scenes, managing or like
Yeah.
you know, even front of house or other positions like throughout the industry that aren't, you know, physically on stage. Like it's all about empowering women in general in the music industry. And so they had this little mentorship program basically where they would link, you know, people who are a little bit more established in their careers with like people just coming out of college basically.
Hmm.
And so I was a mentor for that, and I had this amazing mentee. Her name was Sterling, and now she's like doing it, you know, real full time. She's on tour. She's absolutely killing it. She's a bassist, and like she also plays keys, and she's fantastic. But I got to mentor her for about half a year, and I definitely suggest like as many other people look into that org or orgs like it. I know there's more that exist, you know,
Hmm.
but I think it like they have a lot to offer, and I think they also have a bunch of opportunities where you can shadow people as well, like some sort of like internship type
Hmm.
mentorship. So it's a little more involved.
Yeah.
Um, I think programs like that are really going to help, you know, not just women, but also any minorities in general who just don't really see themselves as represented as other people, you know, so to feel more comfortable and gain that experience so that, you know, when they want other jobs, they already have a bunch of connections that will help them get it, even if they didn't have those before. So I would say definitely suggest joining things like that. And then also now, like, I found out about you through Girls Behind the Rock Show, you know,
Yeah.
the Facebook group. Um, Groups like that, like I've been discovering more and more. Like my a friend in the industry, her name is Elise Solberg. She has another. Um, I don't know actually what it is, if it's just her project or if there's an official title for it, but it's called Turn Up Her Mic, and she's like interviewed different. Like I think she's had panelists, and you know, it's all about uplifting different women basically. And yeah, I know there's a bunch of different orgs that do things like that that try and help younger people who might not have a foot in the industry, like bring them in and let them hear other people's stories. Because for me, one of the things that really has taught me the most was just learning other people's stories, how they got there. Because not everyone has had like the clear cut path. Oh, they went to music school. Oh, they have a parent in the industry that can like given them, give them an internship or a job or something like that. So a lot of these stories are just like finding different ways of like attacking the industry and like getting your foot in the door, basically. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I think they're all great though. Now, luckily, like having so many resources on the internet, we definitely have like much more opportunity in that sense. But yeah, sometimes it still can be tough, despite that, because there are so many people applying for those, and hopefully
Yeah.
just more organizations will continue to pop up. And but I just like encourage anybody who's trying to get into music just to reach out to people, even if it's like just DMing someone. The worst that could happen is that they don't respond, or like, I'm too busy, right? But then
Yeah.
like if you do ask like, hey, like if you don't mind, I'd really appreciate you telling me, you know, how you got to where you were, like even just in a nutshell. And sometimes they're willing to share, You'd be surprised. I'd say some of the people that I've looked up to the most, I always thought like, oh, they're going to be too busy to respond. Like there's one of the people I looked up to, is her name's Victoria Theodore. Amazing pianist. She's played with Stevie Wonder, Beyonce. She's just
Wow.
phenomenal. Yeah, she's played with like the best, basically. And she's more than willing to like have a conversation with me and like explain to me like her path, and she's just so down to earth. I swear all the best people in the industry are also like the most modest ones. So I think just like being willing to put yourself out there to ask these questions and like look out for these opportunities, and just also be prepared to hear no's and be
Yeah.
okay with it, but still be like, all right, let me use this as motivation to keep going, and like until I get the yes, because eventually there will be a yes. Someone's going to take a chance on you if you just keep going. I think a lot of it is perseverance. So I would say just, yeah, being determined, not
Yeah.
giving up. That's a large part of it.
Yeah. I think that's obviously something as humans in general we just struggle is with receiving or people saying no to
Yes.
us. And that makes a lot of people like give up because it's just hard. It's listening or hearing people saying no, thank you, or no, or not responding makes you think like, am I not good enough?
Mm-hmm.
Or did I do something wrong? But it's just like how's it gonna be, and we definitely have to do what you have been doing, calling, emailing, messaging, and just getting out there until someone says yes.
Yeah, because like, yeah, the worst that can happen is that you're in the same place, right? You send an
Yeah.
email, you call, and you don't have a gig. But then if you call, it could potentially lead to a gig, or you're still here without a gig. Like that's the worst that could happen, right? So
Yeah.
I say just always putting yourself out there. Like if I were to hear from someone, reaching out to me, like asking me about how I got to where I was, I'm more than happy to speak to people, because I knew I was that person, like just a few years ago. I don't
Yeah.
forget where I came from. Like I know that like it's really tough when you're starting and you know nobody. So I am like a big advocate of just being like, put yourself out there, and like, and I have to tell myself this too. I remind myself of this because sometimes I'm not getting work, and I'll be like, wow, it's a really slow season, and I get depressed and I think, should I be doing this? Should I have just applied to law school now? Like whenever things get tough, I go to through that
Yeah.
sequence, and it's like just because you get to a certain point in career that you've done cool things, with bigger names, it doesn't mean that you necessarily believe in yourself more, unfortunately. I mean, I'm sure that will help to an extent. Like I am definitely more confident now than I was 5 years ago, but I still definitely have moments of doubt, where I have to remind myself, okay, I'm in this because I love music and I don't want to give up unless like it's dire. Like for me, it's like, if as long as my finances can support it, I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just like keep saying, like putting myself out there, and just also just like sometimes just like working on yourself and telling yourself that like it's okay if things are slow for some.
Yeah.
And I know that for a lot of the people who are getting the big gigs, when they come home, a lot of them actually get depressed because they get home from a big gig and then they don't get booked for a long time, because everyone thinks, oh, they have this one big gig, they're done, like they're busy. And so people stop calling them. So like even those people who are like they have like the most coveted gigs that everyone wants, like even they're struggling. So it's like
Yeah.
knowing that other people are also in it with you, and no one's like constantly in a great place unless they're like, you know, already Beyonce pretty much. Like you're it helps to know that you're not alone in the struggle, and that we're all in it together. Everyone struggles, and you just have to remind yourself and your friends in the industry, like, if we all stick together, we all look out for each other, you know, we look at different opportunities for ourselves and one another, then, you know, I think it's the most healthy way to proceed with being in the music industry.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you were talking about how maybe you got to be acknowledged by someone with a bigger name, or you got to work with like bigger people. I don't know. So what has been like maybe your biggest musical career highlight so far?
I would say there's like a tie between three. And
Okay.
so I would say like the one that like seems to be the one that most people would be the most impressed by, I guess, would be that I played with BB Rexa on the
Yeah.
Ellen Show.
Okay.
So that was the only TV gig that I've had, but it was cool. I got to play on national television, and you can watch it on YouTube.
So
But
how did that happen?
and that's one of those things, like I was building up my like network of people. I was working with different string players, and then my friend Drew, amazing viola player, he recommended me to a string contractor who works with this guy Adam Blackstone. He's like this really famous music director, and Adam, one of Adam's clients is BB Rexa,
Okay.
and they wanted a pianist, you know, they wanted a female pianist for the show, and I guess he normally has a go-to pianist that they usually contract, but for some reason she was unavailable, like probably
Oh
doing
wow.
something cooler, I don't know. I was like, I think this is really cool, so I don't know what could possibly be cooler than this, but sure.
Cool.
But yeah, but because of that, like they were looking for someone, and you know, Drew kind of put my name forward, and I'm super grateful for that, because it really is one of those things, like once you start to build out your network, you're not just looking out for yourself, you're looking out for your friends, and your friends are doing the same for you, right? So it's like, oh, I know Summer, she'd be great for this.
Yeah.
And luckily it just happened, and then I get a call from Adam, and then the next day I'm in rehearsal. Like it was so fast. So I got a call on Sunday, I did a rehearsal on Monday, and then the taping was on Wednesday. So it was
Oh
just bam
wow.
bam bam. So sometimes things just happen so quickly, you know. I would
Yeah.
say that was a really big one. The other big one was my first touring gig ever. Was with this band called Circa Survive, which I listened to them in high school, so for me it was like a very full circle moment. And I covered them on my YouTube
Yeah.
channel for like piano and strings, and they reached out to me and were like, "Hey, do you want to write an arrangement for piano and strings to accompany us at the Shrine in LA when we play there?" And I was like, oh my goodness, like of course, are you kidding? Like I didn't think anyone would ever ask, you know. So it was just so like a really cool moment. So that, even though it wasn't necessarily like the biggest band that I've played with, it was the first like
Mhm.
artist that really took a chance on me, you know. So that was also like very impactful. And then like the third thing was like the most recent tour that I did was with this artist named Kings Elliott. She's a
Mhm.
sweetheart, amazing music. But she was the opener for Macklemore and Imagine Dragons on the last tour. And
Okay.
so that was my first stadium tour. So we got to play
Oh
all
wow.
these stadiums, like some places that like I've, oh my god, I just got goosebumps again. Like it's just one of the, even though I've played them now, it's like I don't feel like any more worthy or anything, you know. It's just one of those things, I had that experience and I'm like, that was so cool. I wish I could do it again, because like we got to play Fenway Park in Boston, which is just like
Mhm.
super iconic. And then we got to play, my favorite one of the whole tour was Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, which was the biggest. I think they said that during our set there were about 50,000 people there, and because we were the opener, you know, and so usually there's like, you know, closer to like 15,000 people like when we're there, but because it's such a large stadium, I think the capacity is like 70 or something crazy
Oh,
like that. There was already like tens of thousands of people there, and I was like, this is insane. I still remember playing and just like looking around at the audience and just seeing like lights and just people, like just it was just a bunch of people, and I was like, this is crazy. And I remember telling myself, Summer, you have to like take mental photos of this because this probably isn't gonna ever happen again. You need to take it in and soak it in and appreciate it. And that's what I just like kept telling myself throughout the set. It's just like to look up and like look at the audience as much as possible to like just soak it in. That was the coolest. As the largest crowd I've definitely ever played for, so that's way up there too. I don't know which of those three is the most important. I can't say, but they're all like very important to me.
Very important. Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're also very kind of different in their
Yeah.
own way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, when you play with the band, that is like a full circle because you used to listen to them. So it's just like maybe they're not the biggest band out there, but it meant a lot
To me,
to
yeah.
you
Yeah.
because it was someone you listened to.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, that is amazing. That's crazy, but it definitely shows that you have put into the hard work on like on reaching out and you were not just at home like crying or complaining on how you were not getting
Yeah.
anything. You weren't putting on the hard work.
Yeah.
And that's how those things happen.
Yeah, it's just honestly like I was I had known at that point, like, okay, Skrillex saw my video and reposted it. So how can I use, like, I don't have a big social media following, but I have other friends who do. But I
Hmm.
remember thinking, like, how have some of my friends who have really large followings never played on tour with, like, different musicians, yet I have a much smaller following, but I have. And I think the
Yeah.
reason is because like I've just been very strategic with how I use social media. Like I use
Hmm.
it to try and get work, which
Yeah.
is like I know that's not everyone's goal. So like I understand, if you want to do it just to like build your brand and create content, I respect that fully. I just know a lot of those people also want to tour and do studio work. And I think the reason that's happened is because like I will cover bands that I want to work with. And so
Yeah.
like the worst that could happen is that they see it and they're like, oh, cool, but they don't really care, right? But then in the best case scenario, like Circa, they saw my YouTube video and they're like, oh my goodness, like, let's work with her. And that to
Yeah.
me is like a dream that I wasn't really expecting to happen, but I'm really glad it did. So I think I'm very, very lucky. And then I'll admit that I definitely like am very determined to just like put out work that I like.
Hmm.
And like I wrote a bunch of like piano and string arrangements, like covering Thrice and Circus Survive and Muse and Rat-a-tat, just like a bunch of music that I like, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm paying for all of those videos to be made, with like my own money made from like weddings and teaching and doing all these other things. That like, sure, I'm not getting paid to do those videos, right? Like I'm putting them out as like a representation of what I can do. And so because I put in that work, I think I knew someone would see it eventually. I didn't think it would be Circa, which is so cool, but I knew someone would like think, oh, maybe we'll work with her at some point. So I'm just really lucky it was them as like the first band I toured with.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I can only imagine if I got to, I don't know, work with someone I really like, or even have them here on the podcast just talking to me. I'll be like, I can talk right now.
That's one of those interviews you're like, I need to make sure I plan everything in advance, like
Yeah.
write all the questions or like, yeah, because that tour that I did with Circa, it was a co-headline tour with this other band named Thrice. And Thrice still is and was at the time my favorite band of all time. So
Mhm.
I got to like sometimes share a green room with them or anything like that. And like I just remember thinking like, Summer, don't fangirl too hard. Like they're gonna think you're crazy. Like just act normal. And so I would
Yeah.
like tell myself to act normal. And I think in those, like I'd either talk too much or I'd not talk at all. And I remember at one point I was like, it's better if you just don't talk at all and you just listen. And so I would just
Yeah.
tell myself just to listen because I was just so nervous. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people are so cool. Like, I can't believe I'm in the same room as them.
Yeah.
It's still nuts. But
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's hard not talking too much or not talking at all because you
yeah,
want to like obviously they have this memory of you participating in the conversation
right,
or saying something, but also like you don't like I feel like at that time you're like, well, I don't want to say anything stupid
right. You're
or
in your head a lot.
or that they think that I'm just like a crazy fun girl, like what am I doing here?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, there was a lot of that went through my head, and I was like, well, hopefully this is the right decision. I guess we'll see, you know.
Yeah.
But it was great. They're very kind people, and it was one of
Mhm.
those things where I was like, I'm really glad, I got to meet them, and like even like their bass player Eddie, like I feel really comfortable talking to him, and then to Dustin, their lead singer. So it's really cool that like I've gotten to the point from like turning from like a fangirl to being like, oh, I can call them kind of like my colleagues, which is like still crazy to think about. Like it doesn't feel right when I say it, but I know like I have like a much better like rapport than I imagined I would with these
Yeah.
people, which is really cool. So yeah, it's just one of those things where like you don't imagine it as a kid, and for me, I know a lot of people's like probably like when they're a musician and they want to work with someone, it's probably someone really famous, like I don't know, Beyonce or Taylor Swift or something. Like, and those people are amazing, so
Yeah.
I understand fully. But for me, like the band I want to work with the most is Thrice, right? Just because
Yeah.
they're my
Yeah.
favorite band. So the fact that I got to like be on tour with them was like the craziest experience for me. I was like, I know like whatever your idol is, it's like going on tour with like them. Even though I wasn't playing with them, I was playing with the other band, but still it
Yeah.
was just such
But you
a
still were in the same
surreal,
like
yeah.
space.
Yeah, it was very surreal regardless. And
Yeah.
to me that was just like, okay, this this is real. You got to like keep working and continue doing things that you've been doing so you can have more of these types of experiences.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think something that we thought when we got your email about wanting to come in the podcast, and we went through, obviously because we also like try to see who this person is,
sure.
not because it matters how big or small they are, just because we want to get to know the person and not just come to talk without like not knowing anything.
Right.
And then obviously we saw like your background and everything, and we were thinking like, why does she want to come talk to us if she obviously has been on like tours and she got to play at the Ellen show, and like she could be like, like talking to someone.
You were ridiculous. No. No. I mean, I maybe it's just because I'm myself and like I know I have imposter syndrome to an extent, like, but like I
Yeah.
don't think anyone's ever too big to talk to other people. For me,
Hmm.
whenever I get to speak to like people like you and
Hmm.
like anyone who I don't know, and kind of share a little bit about my story, I'm
Hmm.
hoping that someone who listens to your podcast is going to be like, you know what? Like, I have a similar story, or like sometimes I feel a way that she does, and maybe it'll help them like hear my story and be like, okay, I'm just gonna try it, because like what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
But at least you can say like, I tried, I put all my effort in there, I worked really hard, and then like I got closer to my dream than I thought I would, but then it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And like I'm not saying that I'm not going to end up being a lawyer someday. I might end up being a lawyer. That's not like that remains to be seen. I'm
Yeah.
only 34. Who knows? Like I could still technically go to law school. But the thing is, like, I think that whenever you hear other people's perspectives on things, I think it's just really important. I think that's one of the things I love the most about the industry is
Hmm.
meeting new people and then
Yeah.
hearing their story, and that's kind of why, like I said, I have this other the AAPI Musicians Project,
Yeah.
is because like I really just want to connect with other people and hear what they have to say, because like so you can learn so much just from sharing your own story and then hearing other people's stories and comparing and being like, wow, at the end of the day, we're really not that different,
Yeah.
and I think just like finding that similarity also gives you like another reason to keep going yourself. Like for
Yeah.
me, I'm just like, yeah, I have done some really cool stuff and I'm really lucky that I have, but I'm also not complacent with that. Like I want to do other cool stuff moving forward, but I also hope that I can inspire some people to be like, oh, yeah, sure, I don't have any connections now, but if I just put in hard work, like maybe I can do stuff like she did. And also, like, I wanted to meet you guys. Like, I really think the Girls Behind the Rock Show group is a really good one. Like I mentioned, like
Hmm.
I worked with Diversify the Stage. I just really enjoy these groups that try and empower other people, because
Yeah.
for instance, like it actually didn't end up working out, but I was supposed to be going on tour as a merch girl, which is a totally different skill set than the one that I have as a
Yeah.
musician, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but like because of the girls behind the rock show group, I posed a question to them. I was like, "Hey, I know what is a good weekly base rate as a backing musician, but I have no idea what a good weekly base rate is for a merch person. Zero idea." And like, I know you get tips as a merch girl. You obviously don't get tips as a musician, like on stage. So, like, how does it work? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I got so many answers. And I remember thinking, wow, this is such a great resource. Like, I can come here because, sure, I might know a lot about being a backing musician, but there's so many other different positions within the music industry
Yeah.
I know nothing about. I don't know anything about managing, doing merch, front of house. Like there's so many different facets of it that you can learn from. And I think resources like that are just so useful. And I loved that like I could go in when I was in talks with the manager, like, and be like, this is a week like I want to ask for $1,000, and sure, I'm willing to come down a little bit, from that. But because people are open, and that like have pay transparency, it really helps me understand like, okay, what numbers should I be looking at about, and like give or take this much, and like what is being too generous or being taken advantage of, things like that. It's
Yeah.
really important to know that. And like, unless you ask people who've done it,
Yeah.
it's really hard to know. And so I'm just really grateful to, share my story, but also like, learn from you and learn from everyone in that group. So
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think definitely those groups are helpful. And it's just like so cool to be able to talk to other people that also kind of started from like nowhere, I guess.
yeah.
So yeah. But now, what is your process when you're composing or arranging a piece? Uh, yeah, I don't know. Do you have like a structure? Is there a certain way that you start with?
So I guess if I'm composing, if it's for me as opposed to for another artist, if it's with, okay, let me backpedal. If I'm working for another artist, if I'm
Mhm,
composing for somebody else, the first thing I always do is ask for music direction, right? Arranging, composing, doesn't matter.
mhm.
I want to make sure that if I'm being hired by someone else to write something, that it fits whatever they imagine, right? I don't, you know, it's always like, if I were to do something on my own, like I have full creative reign, I can do whatever I want. But if I'm doing it for somebody else, they usually have like some idea, like at least like certain constraints, like, oh, I want it to be in this key, or like I want you to use this instrumentation, or like, or sometimes they're really like, do whatever you want, like I trust you. And then I love that. I love having like a lot of creative freedom personally, but it also does help sometimes, being like, oh, I want it to start off like, in a high register or something like that. Any sort of creative direction really helps me make sure that whatever I write will be a product that they end up liking, right? Which is the ideal
Yeah,
outcome, is that the client is happy, I'm happy, right?
yeah.
But if it's just for me, if I want to start writing, honestly, I feel like my husband would be such a good person to answer this question, because I am constantly like, I haven't done it on this podcast, which is better for everybody, but like I just like start singing like humming and singing randomly in the house. Like I'm doing laundry, I'll just like start singing something like a tune, whether it's a song I
Yeah.
know or like something I'm making up. Sometimes I make up stupid songs when I'm like grooming the dogs. Like just like I feel like I'm like this like constant music box, which probably is a little annoying for people around me, low key, but like I always have new ideas musically. And I feel like once I tapped into that, because I never knew that was like I don't know how to describe this properly, but I never knew that like I just could come up with so much material on my own in my
Yeah.
head. Like until I decided, like, I want to write a piece, I was so scared, like, because I didn't have formal composition training. Like, oh, I would mess it up somehow and people would
Mhm.
just like look down upon me or something. I don't know. I was just very anxious about that situation. But once I just realized, like, oh, if I just start with a few notes, like literally any few notes, I can like
Mhm.
take a melody from there, and then like, oh, do I go up or down from there? Like literally just like planning things around just like a basic melody, or thinking like, oh, I really like this chord progression. what new melody could I write over it, right? Like even if I want to take a chord progression from something I already know and I like, like, oh, I was listening to a Dua Lipa song. Let's take this song, use the same chord progression. Oh, maybe I'll flip these chords and substitute this chord.
Yeah.
Like, what does that sound like? Is that cool? Does that suck? Like, I have no idea. Like, let's try it, right? So it's just kind of like
Yeah.
experimenting with what I already know and then kind of building on that, and just like playing around with things and really being willing to make mistakes is really how it started. Because
Yeah.
when I was too scared to make mistakes, I was basically too scared to like even start initially. But then once I realized, who cares, especially when I'm alone, I can make all the mistakes I want. No one knows I'm like,
Oh yeah.
sounding bad when I'm
Yeah.
alone and practicing, right? I sound terrible sometimes. And I'm like, wow, that's a good thing no one's hearing this. And then I'm like, well, now I know that doesn't work. Let's try something else instead. So a lot of it is trial and error, but a lot of it's like now I've gotten to a point where it feels innate. And so I do walk around the house singing random melodies just that I make up for fun. Like, that is just like, it's a weird quirk thing that I do that my husband's like, oh, summer's being summer. Like, just, but that's definitely how
Yeah.
I do it when it's just like I'm starting from scratch. But if I have to work for a client, I get music direction first, and then like that kind of gives me a good base to start from. So depends on the situation.
Okay. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. I guess from my point of view, which sometimes I feel like maybe I'm jealous of people that are a little bit more like you, because most of my life I've done things from like the knowledge point more than the inspiration point. And I'm just like, how do people just get like inspired and write these beautiful things? And here I am just being a nerd and writing things,
Honestly, like that's the toughest thing because like I don't know if I could teach it to myself. It just like one day it made more sense to me and no one taught it to me. I think it was truly like me being like, okay, for me that's how I started like creating my own voice, was like I'd take something that I like and I know I like, but then I would change it because copyright, and then also because like I want to like come up with my own ideas. I'm not going to just steal somebody else's. So I can feel confident and like proud of myself for doing it. And it's just one of those things that like you have to do it a few times and then you're so far away from what it originally started as that you're like, oh, this is cool. And then you like play it a few times, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, where could I go from here? As long as you're okay with making mistakes from where you go, and like especially when you're by yourself, it's like, okay, that sucks, let's not use that
Yeah.
note. Like kind of building it that way where you're like both using like your, you know, theoretical knowledge, but also just, your ear too. Like, so, and it's okay if your ear's wrong,
Yeah.
I think is like the thing that I'm trying to say is like, sometimes my ear's wrong and I'm like, ooh, bad choice, right? But it's okay. You just go back and you try something else and you're like, oh, that's better. Or let's try a few more options. Which one do I like the best? So it's like, there's so
Hmm.
many ways to go about it, but it's weird because I used to be one of those people who was like, how on earth is this person just improvising? Like, it makes no sense to me, right? And like coming from a classical background, unfortunately, they really
Yeah.
do not teach you to improvise. So, like, it's something that you do have to learn. I feel like probably studying with like some jazz teacher, they probably would teach you
Yeah.
much easier ways to like come up with ideas than I am breaking it down. But for me, it's just really just being willing to make mistakes, being willing to hear no and make mistakes are like the two biggest things I can tell you as like a music creator. So
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, do you have any like big music influences right now?
ooh, yeah, I mean, as a composer, I would say just because I studied classically growing up, some of
Hmm.
like at least probably half of my influences as a composer definitely draw from like romantic era classical music. So like
Hmm.
Chopin, Mendelssohn, Rachmaninoff, Debussy, Liszt, like that type of like
Okay.
really big, beautiful melodies over like kind of
Yeah.
cool, complex chord progressions. Like the melodies are not very technical, but or like fast, but they're like big and beautiful, like easily to like very easily
Yes.
like sung or hummed, right? Um, but the chords underneath them are always changing and like are more complex. And yeah, I really like writing like that. But then at the same time, like in the past, gosh, 4 years now, 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I discovered math rock, which I have no idea if you know what that genre is or not. I didn't before that. I thought someone made it up. And I was like, math rock? That sounds terrible. Like, I don't love math.
Yeah.
So, like, what, right?
Like what's
But
going
basically,
on?
it's just like a subgenre of prog, like progressive rock, that is more focused
Hmm.
on like the technical aspects of playing. It's usually very guitar based, which is funny because I'm not a
Okay.
guitarist. Um, but, um, and it's a lot of just like changing time signatures and things of that nature. Like it's usually kind of hard to
Hmm.
find the one. Like it's one of those things where you're like, you really
Okay.
have to think or like count, and you're like, wow, that's crazy. Like you're playing in 13/8. That's like, like I wouldn't have ever thought to write something in 13/8. But in starting to listen to more stuff like that, where like, oh, they're playing in mixed meter, like I've started to like explore that as well. And so now I really like playing in mixed meter and writing in mixed meter, but in a way that I hope comes across as like very digestible. Because I feel like sometimes people write things in mixed meter and it's really complex and cerebral, but it's not easily digestible by like anybody.
Yeah.
When I try and write a mixed meter, I try and make it seem more seamless. So, like, sure, it might be tough if you're trying to figure out what the time signature is, but it still sounds like a big cohesive piece in terms of like it's not jarring in any way. That's the way I try and write. I try and write in mixed meter, but I try and make it still seem really smooth and seamless without it being jarring when it changes those time signatures. So it's like a combination of like that aspect of like prog, math rock, and classical is definitely like my two largest influences. So I would say like my biggest influences are
Yeah.
those classical musicians, but then also I'd say Sean and Polyphia. They're two like really guitar driven bands. I love how they write. Polyphia is probably my favorite. Ugh, if not favorite, second favorite band, only to Thrice, because Thrice has always been my favorite. But like they're close second. Like it's very like I would almost tie them with Thrice at this point. And then I also really look to Thrice and Circa Survive and Muse in terms of how all their guitarists write their riffs and how the lead singer writes their melodies, like over whatever chord progressions they
Okay.
use. Because all of those bands, there's some really complex chord progressions that I really like, and they have really great lead singers. They're all very different. Like Dustin's got like this raspier, like lower, grittier voice, and Anthony has this like really crisp high tenor that like if you didn't know he was a man, sometimes you might think he was a woman because it's such a high range. It's so impressive. But then, and then like Matt Bellamy has like that crazy falsetto, from Muse. Like it's like they all sing very differently from one another, and it's all very
Hmm.
impressive what they can do with their voice. And I like to do a lot of studying of how they write their melodies to like incorporate it when I'm playing piano too. So it's like a combination of all those things would probably be my influences now. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, no, you're fine. You're completely fine. And now, just kind of to finish off, I wanted to ask if there's any song that has changed your life and or maybe help you get into uh the music. Like, was there any song that at some point in your life made a big difference?
One song. My goodness.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, not necessarily one song. You can
okay. Okay, I'm going to say not a song, unfortunately,
okay.
the album Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. And the reason I'm going to say that is because that was the first rock album I ever listened to.
Okay.
It was in high school. My friend Thomas had asked me if I listened to Linkin Park. And until that point, like literally until high school, my parents let me listen to classical music, one Spice Girl CD, and the Space Jam soundtrack. That's all I listened to. It was mostly classical. It was like 90% classical. And then I begged them to let me get the One Spice Girl CD because all the other popular kids like, were listening to Spice Girls. Um,
Yeah.
and so I begged them that they let me have one. And then I also had the Space Jam soundtrack, which I remember I used to know all the words to, which, yeah, that's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But then I went to high school, and that's really when I was exposed to pretty much everything else. Like I had never really listened to very much anything besides classical, essentially,
Yeah.
until I was in high school. And my friend Thomas is like, "Here, listen to this CD. It's called Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park." And I was like, "I have no idea what to expect whatsoever." And I remember start listening to it, and I'm like, "This is crazy!" Like I had never heard anything remotely like it. It doesn't sound. Let me tell you, it does not sound like classical music. It does not sound like Spice Girls, and it did not sound like Space Jam soundtrack. It didn't sound like any of those things. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh wow, this is like this guy sounds angry." And I remember thinking like, wow, like, as an angsty teenager, you're just like, oh yeah, like going through it with your parents, and like you're just like you're learning and dealing with different problems in your like social circles because you're a teenager and just all these different things. And it just felt like it reflected my emotions so well in music, and I had never experienced that before, and I was like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. So I would say it wasn't one particular song off of Hybrid Theory, but just like the
Hmm.
album in general like represented just like all of what music could be that I didn't know it could be.
Yeah.
So when I first started trying to cover music I liked on piano, the first non like classical song that I was like trying to play um, was "Numb" by Linkin Park. So
Yeah.
I would say just Linkin Park in general
Okay.
was definitely a like the gateway drug of music for me into like everything that wasn't classical, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's a very good band. So,
Yeah, they're great. So yeah, very
okay.
R.I.P. Chester. So
So, just to finish off, is there anything else that you want to mention, put out there for the listeners, advice, or just anything that you want to put out there?
sure. I mean, I guess advice I would say, just please don't be discouraged. I This is coming from someone who's been discouraged a lot, but like still push through, and that's not to say that that's going to stop necessarily. Like once you achieve certain things, you might get less disappointment moving forward because you've achieved those things, but it's not going to entirely stop. You're still always going to be disappointed with something at some point. But let that still continue to motivate you because if you're someone that's just gonna like get discouraged by a few no's, you're not gonna make it in the industry. Like you have to get
Yeah.
used to hearing no's and being okay with it. Like you're allowed to get disappointed as long as you're gonna push yourself to still move forward. So I would say learn to do that, and then also just making mistakes. I think a lot of people are scared to make mistakes, especially like on social media, something that is
Hmm.
seems more permanent, like, oh,
Yeah.
video, it's out there and I made a mistake in the video, who cares? Like at least you put yourself out there. To me, that was the most important thing. In all my first videos of me playing, there were mistakes. You can go back, you can listen to them, and we're like, oh, that's a mistake. And I just remember thinking, like, I didn't edit them. I just thought, like, okay, this is literally a live take of me playing, and it's like audio from my phone. It's not even like mic'd properly or anything. But I was like, you know what? This is a very accurate representation of me playing now because it's 100% what I did. It might not sound really great sound quality wise, but at least I know I did this. I'm proud of it. And here, here, internet,
Yeah.
do with it what you will. If you want to, lambast it, it's fine. As long as like I'm proud of it, that's really what matters. Like you're gonna get some people hating at some point, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as long as you're okay with being like, I can deal with it and move past that and move past no's, I think that is like the key characteristic that's gotten me to where I am. Is just like being okay with all of the mistakes, all the no's, and still just moving forward and being like, I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
And I'm determined to get there. So that's my advice. Um, and yeah, I just really appreciate you having me on here.
Okay. Well, Summer, thank you so much for coming and talking to me, especially right now.
That's good. You're so sweet.
We really we really wish from my point and from like the team in general, we really wish to like the best things for you to come. Let us know. We would love to have you back at some point. If you have anything big coming up. So yeah, and just for our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening to Summer talking about her experience in the music industry. And be sure to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at SEO Lives Podcast.